Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I present the one and only Coach Jim Johnson. All right, you guys have heard us talk about him. You've heard of the legend. Me and J Mac, we spoke about the man, the myth, the legend. This is Coach Jim Johnson. He's so much further ahead than, you hear about all these self-help gurus now doing podcasts, and you see all these people, motivational speakers. Well, about 30 years ago or more, for some people, Coach Johnson was leading his troops. And back in these days, this is old school basketball. So we're going to hit a lot of subjects because Coach has had a chance to see the evolution of the game in its entirety. And he understands the game from playing like the Hoosiers to the Allen Iverson era till now. Because he stays up to date. He's the J-Mac Miracle. This is the man. He's been around. So we have Coach Jim Johnson, and we're going to make sure that he speaks on autism, because he has way more knowledge than me. I'm just over here I'm a sponge right now, and I'm learning from the great one. So we have Coach Jim Johnson is here. Coach, can you introduce yourself to everybody? Tell everybody about yourself.
Well, thanks, Howard. So it's good to be with you. Howard is a former player, so I was blessed to coach him. I'll just give you a quick background. So I actually played for my dad in high school at Greece, Arcadia. And after I graduated from high school, my dream was I wanted to be a high school coach and teacher.
Wow.
And so I went to SUNY Cortland. Got my degree, had my ups and downs. Fortunately, I met my bride there my junior year. We've been married for 42 years. Her name is Pat. And we have one son, Tyler. He's an attorney, so he didn't follow his mother and father's footsteps of being a teacher. And he lives in California. And so I started my journey as a teacher and a coach. And early on, I struggled a little bit at getting a full-time job teaching. I was teaching part-time. I was coaching various sports. Basketball was my number one love. And I did, my first year, I did a freshman team at Greece Arcadia, where I went to high school. And then I did 2 years at Greece Athena as the JV coach. And then at 25, my dream came true. I became a head coach at Churchville Chili High School.
Wow.
And their program wasn't in very good shape, but I was kind of cocky and thought I could turn it around.
Yes.
But it didn't go too well. I, in fact, led that team to 17 consecutive losses. Yes, wow. You heard that right, losses.
Was this your first year?
My first year as a head coach.
First year as a head coach, 17 losses.
17 losses in a row. So it was a pretty tough start. And then they had insult to injury. I actually was on an interim position, and they decided not to rehire me. So I ended up losing my job. So my first head coaching job did not go well. It was, in fact, some would call it a disaster. So I got, the blessing I got, though, was it ended up probably being one of my best professional experiences, although it was a difficult one, because it gave me two powerful motivators. One, it motivated me that I had a burn in my belly the rest of my life that I was going to prove I could be a successful coach. And number two, it kind of woke up an arrogant 25-year-old that realized I had a lot to learn about how to be a better leader and a coach. So I started my journey, and I got a blessing. I got recruited to work at a junior college, Genesee Community College, with a guy named Bill Van Gundy. And Coach Van Gundy ended up being a Hall of Fame coach. But the interesting thing is his two sons, Jeff and Stan, have been head coaches in the NBA numerous times. So it was quite a basketball family.
Wait. So this is a cloth. This is a cloth we're talking about. So you were on the same team?
No,
he was your coach?
I was assistant coach for Bill Van Gundy. His sons did not play at the school.
So you were with his father?
His father, yes.
So that's who you learned from?
Yes. So he was one of my mentors early in my career.
Wow, and, Coach, I never knew that.
Yeah. So that was And then I actually after that, I grew up in a big town, Greece, but I actually got an opportunity to work 2 years at Leroy High School, which is a smaller school. It was really known more for football.
Leroy,
but I took over there,
County,
and they weren't very good. But fortunately, we were able to kind of turn it around. We had a winning season our second year. But then my blessing was I got an opportunity to come back to Greece, and I actually worked one more year in college. I worked at Nazareth College for an assistant 1 year. And then I became the head coach at Greece Olympia. And that was my greatest challenge at that point, because Greece Olympia at that point was not very good. They had really struggled. But we got there, and we went through our second season. We had a winning season, which was encouraging. But then, at a very humbling third year, we had some talent, but we didn't mesh very well, and we plummeted. We only had 2 wins my third year at Olympia.
Wow.
So that was kind of my... but then we got it going. The fourth year, we were almost 500, and then the last 3 years, we had very good teams. In fact, the last 2 years, you being part of one of them.
Okay.
2 of them, actually, we got a chance to be the number 1 seed in the sectionals.
Okay, Coach. So I don't want to cut you off. Everybody back home that is listening to this inspiring story, let me tell you my side of the story about Coach Johnson. When Coach Johnson reiterates that he was cocky, let me say this to anybody who is watching this. Coach Johnson gained his respect because he was willing to play against any guy on the team in a game of one-on-one, and he'll bust you out. He doesn't miss. He did not miss at one point, and we used to get so frustrated playing against him because he knew your weakness, and like we had a lot of athletes. I was like, there's no way that he can score on me. And Coach would send everybody home. I remember he beat DeMond in a game of one-on-one, and DeMond threw the ball at the wall, and the ball came back at his head. So Coach was definitely one of them. He was different because he actually, like when you hear a coach talking about a drill and they're explaining a drill, what Coach Johnson was able to do, he'll say, I want you to rotate the ball around, and then it comes back around to him, and then they'll give him the ball back, and then it'll just every time, swoosh, it didn't matter, swoosh, every single time while he was explaining the play, explaining the offense. And Coach was like, you look at him now, he's more reserved. Coach Johnson used to snap. Any kid out there that feels that your coach yelled at you, no, we're talking about old school coaches. Coach, I need you to talk about how you were hot. You used to lose it because there's young coaches out here that want to learn. And you're looking at the man right here, and Coach used to snap. He used to crash. That's what they call it nowadays. He was a crash out king. Coach used to crash. Coach, talk about the crashing. What changed it? When did you decide to switch the mode?
Well, I was always intense, and I was really driven, as you know.
Absolutely.
And I really drove players hard. I think one of the things I learned over time was that you had to pick your spots better, because sometimes I would lose control when I shouldn't have lost control. And so that was one thing that I think I learned as I improved, because I wanted to be a really good model for my players. And, and when you go through adversity, what you do in sports,
you do.
You're going to have times, and that's where I got better as I got wiser and older, but is that to be able to handle adversity better. Because
I know every referee knew about you.
Yeah. So.
And you were so intense. You were driven. Like, you gave us passion.
Yeah.
Because I used to think to myself, like, I wonder if Coach even goes home at night. I used to think to myself, like, does he even go home?
I got it.
I told you. Let's go. accomplish what they accomplished.
I said it.
Let's get to Glen's balls. 3 days. 2 days. 48 hours.
Just because you were so focused and you were going off to all these different workshops, and I remember, like, for me to remember the Rick Pitino's, the who was the one? It was Rick Pitino, and you modeled your style after, it was the Kentucky Flyers, and was it couldn't have been Calipari. Was it the Rick Pitino package?
Rick Pitino was one of my main idols, in coaching. I mean, John Wooden, the late John Wooden was way ahead. I learned a lot, just reading and learning.
Your father was a basketball coach.
My father was my basketball coach, so I learned from him as well, certainly. So I think one of the things that, now that I do speaking, I talk about the passion, and that, that's got to rub off and be contagious. And so we really, we're high energy. And I got our late friend, but Coach Steve DeRoy.
Oh, yeah, Coach DeRoy. Shout out to Coach DeRoy.
He was my JV coach and my right-hand man, and we were very blessed because he was very passionate about basketball.
Yeah, he loved basketball. He helped balance you out in a lot of ways.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
It was the yin and the yang, He was the yin and the yang. If you knew any better, you sort of went over to Coach DeRoy at certain times. You had to go. If you was running a little bit late, you slide over to Coach DeRoy a little bit. Because Coach Johnson was definitely a stickler for time.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I try to, I do a lot of leadership presentations now when I talk to, is that I think as a leader, you got to establish, you can't have a lot of rules, but you got to have what I call a few non-negotiables. Okay. And one of those was, for us, as you well know, you brought it up, being on time was something that was highly expected. And as I always used to kid you guys, that if you can't be on time, be early. Those are your choices.
Now, nowadays, it's such a different change in culture. Mm-hmm. Because now I had a chance to see some of the new school Athena. Mm-hmm. And Coach Setzer, he has a different relationship with each of his players. Mm-hmm. So he has a lot more leniency. Mm-hmm. Do you think 1995 Coach Johnson would be able to coach in today's game with the players currently?
It's a great question, because I think if you're going to maintain coaching, I coached 35 years, but I retired at 57, so I'm 65 now, so I've been out of it. This is my 9th year out. Is that I think you make adjustments, but certainly there were some things that I wasn't going to lower my standards. That we had certain expectations. And, everybody's different. There's a lot of different ways you can be successful, but as a leader, you got to figure out what's best for you. Yeah. And what's best, because you do have to, I think it's really important to build relationships with players and get to know them. And, there's some guys you can drive harder by yelling at them. Yeah. Some guys, as they don't handle getting yelled at too much. So those are things that you're just trying to learn as a coach, is how can you inspire and motivate each player individually for the common goal for the team, right?
So when we started talking about this whole team and program, and I was talking to J-Mac, I wanted everybody, every coach, every superintendent, listen in when I say this. I've always believed that the reason why they pay coaches so much and why coaches are so important to high schools and colleges is because they're honestly the structure of the school and the drive. Mm-hmm. Because when you're balling, you're one of the stars of the school. Everybody know you. You carry yourself a certain way, and you can only be as much as the coach is gonna allow you to carry yourself. Mm-hmm. So with Coach Johnson, you ran a program that was more than just I'm coaching you during the season.
Right.
You were one of the first coaches I seen that you had a fall program. Mm-hmm. Then you had us during the spring. We did spring together. Yeah. Then it was summer. We were doing the summer together. Some of us had to go off to football. Right. Except you continued a year round. You see all these trainers now. You see how all these kids have a trainer.
Right.
Well, we had Coach Johnson, and it was not only the training, but it was the mental conditioning.
Yeah.
that was so heavy in your training.
Yeah.
I need you to talk to the people back home, because some coaches, they look really good in IG pictures. They take a lot of pictures with little results of their players. I'm here to tell everyone that when we left Greece Olympia, all of us graduated and we went on to do something with ourselves. So, Coach, can you please give your philosophy of creating the culture?
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that I really tried to create is, I call it my leave a profit philosophy, was that everything we were going to touch, we're going to make better, not worse. Or another way is, everything we touch turn to gold, not garbage, right? Okay. So that was something we really try to focus in on. And the other thing that, I know people, you talk, I was real big into personal growth. And if you can strive as a leader to get a little bit better, the famous 1% rule each day, and then you encourage your players, can they get a little bit better each day? Because, life accumulates, the compounding effect. So if you're getting a little bit better each day, that compounds into something really special. And what I tried to create as a culture is, I called it the 2 C's. And one is caring. So our players knew we were caring about them, but also challenging. So it was not easy to play in our program. We spent a lot of time, as you said, both in the season and off season. We practiced before school. We shot free throws before school.
The early morning workouts. Yeah. Wow. And I remember DeMond picking me up. Right. And he didn't care. Coach didn't care if it was 6 feet of snow outside. He was waiting for you to cross those doors. You had to be there early, early morning workouts. And just to add on to that, guys, because I know somebody's probably sitting around and you're thinking to yourself, like, who did he honestly coach? A lot of coaches can't say that they've coached players that have gotten player of the year multiple years. Mm-hmm. You've done that multiple times. Yeah. And it isn't like Athena or Olympia was just a haven of talent like an IMG. No, these are guys that lived in the area and they went to your program and they became multiple player of the year. So you'll think about somebody like DeMond Stewart, 2-time player of the year, and then I know I can think of Anthony Lamb. What was he like, a 3-time player of the year, 2-time, 3 times?
I think 2 or 3. He was first team All-Garacha 3 times, I know. So, but yeah. And another thing you brought up that, let's talk just briefly is the mental piece of the game. We did mental imagery sessions.
Yes, we did.
And we did a lot of things.
I will be there.
Okay, let us begin our imagery session. Hey,
What's the computer?
okay.
Are you kidding me?
Can you turn that computer off?
Gotcha, Coach.
Things that try to build right up here, because we know the physical is really important in athletics, but so is the mental. And back then, that wasn't as big as it.
It wasn't,
and so it was
we never had concussions.
Yeah,
we never had concussions unless he needed a timeout.
Yeah.
So let's get back to this mental aspect, because you have a lot of and I have to always give props to the guys I played ball with, because a lot of us have went on to do some major things. You had high honor roll students. Mm-hmm. You have business owners now. You have professional athletes. You have Tim Ann. Shout out to Tim Ann. Tim Ann is doing big things. I seen him. We were at Section 5 a couple years ago, and I'm like, what are you doing here? And I see him across the court, and he's like, I'm one of the sponsors. Yeah. I'm like, you're sponsoring Section 5 now? Yeah. That came out of Greece Olympia, Coach Jim Johnson. You think about somebody like Animal Solar. Yeah. He's a superintendent wherever he goes. Yeah, yeah. So he's been to so many different locations. Yeah. You got DeMond is a professional ball player. Then he wins a Section 5 championship, walks away, and now he's an athletic director. Right. You have Alex Okozie, right? Yeah. And I remember Alex. I don't know how well he remembers me, but what he's like the CEO or
Not
what
a
is he?
CEO, but he's got a pretty high executive job for Google. I think he's in charge of the Africa operations, and so I know he's in England, but I think he does a lot of work in South Africa. So he actually lived with my aunt for 7 years.
Wow.
Because his junior year, Alex had moved around. Alex is from Nigeria, but he moved to the U.S. to live with an older brother in 6th grade. And his older brother was in sales and ended up getting a lot of jobs. So actually, Alex's junior year, when he transferred to Olympia, that had been his 3rd high school.
Wow.
And what happened was...
he was built.
Yeah, he was a good-looking kid,
Yeah.
and he had some ability. But the interesting part is the week before we were supposed to start practice, so we were, I'll never forget it, we were at Olympia for an open gym. It was a week before we started practice. And I'm in my office just doing a couple things before the open gym started, and I get a knock on the door, and it's Alex. And Alex is really distraught. You could tell from his face. And I said, Alex, you okay? And he literally came in and started crying.
Yeah.
And he told me that Coach, his brother was going to move out of town for a sales job. And it's a little bit longer story, so I'll cut it. Is that I actually was at a family function the next day after Alex told me, and I brought up Alex's dilemma, and my aunt actually took him in.
Wow.
And she was only going to take him in for a week. We were trying to find a home for him, and my aunt fell in love with the kid, and he ended up going all the way. He went to a prep school because he kind of struggled in junior and senior year. His attitude was a little subpar.
Yeah.
And his work ethic wasn't where it should be. But to his credit, my aunt, and we pushed him really hard, and he went to a prep school, and he really did well. And then he excelled, and he ended up getting a full scholarship to Division II, ended up being their senior athlete of the year. And then he started at MTV.
Wow.
And he ended up being the vice president of Africa operations in MTV. And a really little sidelight, in fact, I do it in some of my leadership presentations, is my aunt called me all excited one day. This is years ago, and she says, Jim, you won't believe what happened. I said, what's that? She goes, you got to pick up Forbes magazine. I said, hey, Midge, I don't read Forbes. I read Sports Illustrated. She goes, well, pick up Forbes this week. I said, why is that? She goes, because Alex is on the cover.
Wow. He was on the cover?
The cover of Forbes magazine.
Shout out to Alex and Cozy,
so
man. That is big time.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That is big time. Except, you know what? We're going to take a quick break. And then we got to talk about Mike Grossadonian. You got to talk about Mike Grossadonian because it's just like he followed in the footsteps in a way. Yeah. So hold on.